Howdy out there, Dave Duford here with the insurance dudes, Jason Feltman and Craig Pretzinger, right? Did I screw it up or say it right?
You got it. You got
like
it.
my name, Duford. So how you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks for having us on. This is so cool.
It's awesome. It's nice to, we were just talking about it, let go of the reins and just relax.
Right. Well, you're with me, so everything's safe and sound. So why do I have the insurance dudes on? First of all, they are very successful in the P&C space, and selling millions upon millions of dollars over the last couple of years. And they are on here today on this interview, talk about their story from how they got into the business, how they took over the reins of a P&C business at their different intervals as they got into the business, and how they expanded it successfully. So if you're interested in learning how to expand a P&C agency, and you want to hear from people actually doing it, then this video is for you. Of course, if you're a newer agent looking into the business, looking around at kind of what the options are and how people who are successful do it, you're going to get a nice under the hood look at how this business or their businesses operate. So why don't we go ahead and start with you guys? Explain kind of your story, your background, how you got into this business.
Since Craig's older, let's let him go first.
Right.
Oh boy, that's so gentlemanly of you. I bought my agency about 13 years ago. Prior to that, I was at Merrill Lynch, so I was chasing money. And here in Tucson, the minimum criteria was 250,000. So I was cold calling all day long. Back then, it was with you had to crank the phone and hold the thing and operator. Give me, so
these old guys.
Yeah. And I thought, well, I met a gentleman who had left and bought an agency, and it just sounded like the best thing in the world, because everybody is a potential client, right? For PNC. I thought, wow, that seems with a lot less friction. So I dove in. I didn't know anything about P&C insurance, and I overpaid for this agency. It was a very large book. And this was right at the end of 2008. So you can imagine what happened. I work, I'm associated with a carrier who's on the premium side of that equation. And so the premium started to dwindle, and it was really, really dropping at a very high velocity. We ended up losing a few million in a couple years, and the note didn't go down, right? So the note's not going down, but the premium is, and I was smart enough to know that there's a problem and I got to fix it. And so I was in there trying to do everything, and it was tough. And it got to the point where I didn't even want to really come to the office. And this went on for years and years, but we did stabilize it. We got to the point where we were writing enough to stabilize it, but it was always just this, just under the surface with a straw breathing. And so it was frightening. And I didn't feel like there was really a way out. And I had a very scarcity mindset, because it was so tight with cash flow that it was hard to really do anything. Let alone grow, and let alone open another agency and all of these things. So I just was like, I can't get out of it because I can't sell it because we're upside down, and just over and over, staying up at night, trying to figure out how to break through. We started switching some things up and had some improvements. 2017, I had a pretty decent staff, and I was doing telemarketing in office. I had telemarketers, because I just thought, I got to do something. I got to make it happen. But then I was there till 8. It was nuts. Then there was issues with my family, because it was just like constantly at the office from early morning till late at night. And then that wasn't sustainable. But we started to, notch up a little bit, and it's like, okay, we're making some traction. And, then we're getting the reports and starting to look decent, but still not crushing it, because it was such a long road to get to where we'd really be ahead. And that's about the time that Jason and I met. And I think we'll pause there, because that's where things started to get good, but I'll let Jason jump into his story, and then we can converge.
Great.
That sounds good.
Nice. Yeah. So prior to to insurance world, I was bartending, went back to school, had some family in the business that said, "Hey, there's a good opportunity here." So I said, if I by the end of my junior year, or was it junior year? I think it was. I said, if I couldn't figure out what to get into, then I guess I'll go into insurance. I just had a weird taste of what insurance was. So I decided, we came up to that last year, decided to get into insurance. And so I was bartending and going to school, jumped in, bought a small struggling book of business for as much as a house costs out here in California, jumped in, there's filing cabinets everywhere. And it just kind of freaked me out. Couldn't figure out how to sell. Couldn't sell a policy to my mom. Took 8 months for her to buy a policy from me. So
really,
literally 8 months. It was no, I'm dead serious. It was painful. I think we were selling an average of like 10 policies a month. But we were told we weren't able to bonus. And then the last 2 months they said, "Hey, you can bonus. But now you got to sell like 100 policies." So we went from selling 10 policies a month that I had to figure it out. Had a friend that was selling internet, or that was buying internet leads. And I said, okay, well, I need to do X amount of policies within the next 2 months. So kind of followed his process, got his CRM, and just bought a bunch of internet leads, ended up making the bonus. And so that year was able to get me into a territory for the next year, to have this extra cash flow available to my thought was, hey, I'm going to take this and I'm going to figure out how to, make this money, make a ton more money, because I do not want to stay at the level that we were at. So then that following year, I had a friend that was working at the live transfer company that told me how live transfers work. And that basically there are internet leads, and they call on their own internet leads that they're selling to all these agencies, and then transferring them to an agent and then selling them for a bunch of money. So I said, cool, I want to do that in our agency. So did the same thing. Started buying a bunch of internet leads, thinking that it was a good idea to have the agents do that. But 400 plus dials a day. Month one they were okay. Month two, starting to get burnt out. Month three, they're like, this is the worst job on the planet. Yeah, it's the worst. So then realized that, hey, we got to get a cutoff here. So during that process is when Craig and I met. We were talking, decided to start a podcast and interview a bunch of agents, see what they're all doing too. So we kind of during that time figured out exactly how to do this with telemarketers, and put a process together, and then that's when we both said, you know what, the opportunity is to open up a scratch agency. So now that we figured out how to kind of do this in a bulk way, if we open up a scratch agency, we can generate more cash flow and scale our businesses, which had always been, the dream, right? The insurance dream. So we did that, and then we were able to both scale. And I think at the highest point of that, we were selling a combined total of $1 million a month.
Wow. Yeah,
$1 million a month in annualized auto premium. So pretty cool, pretty fun. That part's fun, right? It's always fun to win, not to lose.
The peaks,
that first year.
The peaks are a lot of fun, but then as we all know with sales, you have the peaks and the valleys, and it doesn't just click either. I mean, when I opened the Scratch on November 1st, 2019, and I knew I had all the pieces, everything in place. I knew the numbers. I was very confident. I knew what I needed to invest. I had the money, everything's great. And then we open 2 weeks later, the whole staff turns over, they're gone. And it's like, oh no, everything just fell apart. Right. And then it was, okay, I just have to focus on this problem, right? Bring it. There's always, like you said, David, there's on our podcast. There's always a problem. It's just, is the problem getting better or not?
Right.
And I mean, this is a good problem in that, okay, it's fixable and it's going to help when we get the right people. So when we get the right people, I get to right before Christmas of 2019, it still wasn't clicking at the rate that it needed to be for the spend that was going out. And I called Jason. Well, Jason and I were talking nonstop and we're doing the podcast and all that, but he just we looked through everything. He said, let's look at the numbers, because he had a better handle on the numbers than I did at that point. And he just said, you just need to feed more leads in there. And I'm thinking, I'm already 60K in the hole now, like I can't, what am I going to do? And I'm about to get on the plane to go to Hawaii and I have to pretend everything's great with my wife. And there's just sweat dripping down.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I upped the leads. I got more telemarketers. While I was in Hawaii, it's when it clicked, and it just went up exponentially after that. We had our best month, January. It just kept getting better and better. Our best month was a year later, which was a little bit over 300K.
That's awesome.
So if you annualize that, 600K, I mean, it was crazy, but I was right at the point of throwing in the towel, and I didn't know that a week later was the turning point. Right. And, it's a little bit of faith, a little bit of craziness, and you have to have an abundance mentality. You cannot count every penny. You have to be willing to accept that there's breakage in that, you buy 300 leads. Guess what? A bunch of them are going to be crap. Some of them are going to be Mickey Mouse. Some of them are going to be fake. It doesn't matter. You just keep moving. And once you get over that, then it really, really takes off.
What was that point like when you made the turn, that inflection point? Because this is a common issue, I think, with all agents, right? They watch my videos, they hear your podcast, and they hear about scale. They hear about the importance of having not a scarcity, but an abundance of leads. But there's always that fear-based scarcity thinking. What did it take for you? Was there an inflection point, or what did it take to just jump all the way in?
Well, I trusted Jason because he was, what were you, like a year ahead of me or 6 months ahead of me in that path. And so I knew that because of what he had done, that it could be done. And that was enough. It was like, okay, I'm going to keep going. I know that I don't give up. And especially if somebody says you can't do that, then I really don't give up. And, it just, once it clicked and I saw, you see it, you're like, holy crap, we just did 200 items. Oh, we just did 300. And it just kept, ratcheting up, and the team kept getting better. I mean, there's so many pieces in that. You have to train the team. The team has to believe they get better and better. And, you have big teams of salespeople. When it starts clicking, and that you can feel the energy when you walked in, you can feel the energy in that sales room. And my room is much like Jason's, is that they're all jammed into one area, and it's by design. Even during COVID, they said, I said, okay, we can put everybody in different spots, and get everybody. And they're like, no, we want to stay in here and we don't want to wear masks. And I'm
right.
Okay, sign this thing. And, we wrote it all through COVID. It was great.
And did you make this inflection point? And I'm going through this because I think it's really important, because there's agents right now listening to this. They're at something similar to this.
Yes.
And I think it's useful for them to know as much as possible the full perspective. Did you have 100% confidence to make that jump, or were you still in doubt to some extent?
I mean, there's always that little piece of you in the back of your head, like, are you, but I just had to, I knew that it worked. It was like the two battling, the logic and the emotion, and you just have to overcome that emotion. Like, we've talked about it a lot with the Teledudes clients, in that, hey, look, some people get gung ho. They're like, I want to get 5 telemarketers and do this. It's like, whoa, slow down. You have to have an understanding about the emotional component, because there's a battle, right? There's this duality between the logic, which is on the paper, and the numbers work. The numbers don't lie. Like, the numbers work, but then there's the emotional piece. And salespeople, like we're all salespeople, and by design, we're a little more emotional than the regular person, which is why we're good at sales. But when you're suffering from an emotional standpoint, when you're suffering because the money's going out, but it's not coming back yet, you start to question, right? And you have to be able to walk through that piece. I had the support of Jason. So I had one, and I believed it, and that's what got me through it. And anybody that's in this situation, you've got to plug in with somebody, some group that's going to help through that, because the emotional component is a challenging piece.
Right. I mean, it's a big stake, it's a big jump, and you got to be uncomfortable. Jason, can you speak to that? I mean, you came into this first, right? You went scratch first. Yep. What was tell us about if there was an inflection point, or how did that process go?
So when I purchased the agency, like I was making $100K a year from bartending. So I purchased the agency for like $750,000, and then we were only going to make like a net profit of 60 grand. That's all we made like the first year. I said, well, this is not going to work. So, yeah, my family was like, dude, don't worry. Like, and I'm like, well, I kind of worried. I don't know what to do here. I don't see anyone that's like dominating here, and there's got to be a way. So, I think that through that process, probably the best thing that ever happened, because, after that first year, once I think the first bonus that I got was right around 45K. And I remember thinking that this will change my year if I get this. So at that last 2 months, there was no question of, I just had to make it happen. It took about $6 grand that we spent in live transfers to make the 45. And I almost look at it like kids. My mother-in-law said that at one point that kids will only do what you're willing to put up with. And I think that that's a good analogy with everything in life. I was not willing to settle where I was at. Like I remember thinking that second year when we got that bonus check and wanted to figure it out, I remember thinking like, I don't care about this money. I have to take this and figure it out. Like I have to figure out how we're going to take this and grow. And then we were able to do that next year. And then we bonused, and then got a way bigger bonus, and then said, you know what, I'm taking this money. We're going to do the scratch agency because I know that there's more money there. Like we have to figure this out. My whole goal was to not take anything in the immediate, any kind of money or anything. I said, I don't care. I'll live like, super meager. Me and my wife, that's what we're used to prior to that. So we lived super meager, don't care about anything nice. But I'm just going to take all this and I'm going to double down until I figure out how to really crush it at this. And there was no, like in my mind, yes, I doubted a lot of the stuff, but there was no alternative for me. Because
no plan B?
No, I just, for where I was at, no, it was like, this is not going to, the level. So we bought the book, it went down to about 2.2 million. And with expenses and everything else, it was like, I'm not settling like that level. I'm not going to make 60 grand a year. And then also have the debt of the business. Like that would be, I made the worst decision of my life at that point, and I was not going to settle for that. Right. So yeah. So I think that's the settling factor. I think a lot of agents are comfortable. And when you're comfortable, it's like, oh, I don't want to risk not being comfortable just for a little bit of gain,
Right.
Because they're already in a very comfortable position. And a lot of the people that we know, the agents that have really crushed it at like internet leads and doing the transfers and that's in our Teledudes program, they all just did not accept it. Like they're most of them are a little bit what Craig would consider younger, and everybody are doing the same type thing. They're double down. But they, you know, that's,
well, yeah, because you can, like, I've seen it so many times in my many decades of being alive that people will get the bonus and then they go buy a Ferrari or something, right? Some depreciating asset instead of reinvesting back in their business, or even investing outside, like go buy stock or whatever. It's like, why not put it back into your money machine? You know, at least until there's too much money to reinvest, right? There becomes a certain point where you're like, oh shit, now I actually have to take money. And that's what it's like. Project what you need to do to get to the bonus, spend as much as possible to get to that, and then take that bonus and just start rolling it. Because I mean, 2-3 years in, there's more money than you can put back into it, unless you want to really go huge, you know, like $1 million a month or something.
And I know for me in building my agency, and I still think this way, it's like, what if it all goes away tomorrow?
right.
You know, it's
100%.
like, I'm not comfortable with where I'm at. I've got to make sure that every single, what if this doesn't work, that doesn't work? I've got to make sure that I have a diversity of income, that I'm safe from peril and what could happen in my business. Cause I've been there before when I didn't have money, and it sucks, and I'm not going back. So it's like spending that money on something fun. First of all, like a Ferrari gets old after a couple of weeks. It's
right.
You talk to
especially
people
if you're
money,
married, then it's useless.
It's exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly.
I mean, what's the point?
Right.
It'll just get you more trouble.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So it's just stuff, right? You know, you can build a legacy, you know, you can build safety and security for generations to come, you know? So I think that's a good point, you guys.
Well, and you'll hear like, I just need to wait, or I need to do this. And it's like, wait for what? Because not doing anything means that you're going to have less, right? If you don't do anything now, next month it's 10% less or 2%, whatever, right? You drop, and eventually you get to the point where now there's no staff, and then it's just you. And now we're in trouble, because I mean, you can't ever get back ahead.
Right. And there's that time element too, where it's like, you know, with renewals and everything else, the money can, if you do it faster, then you have that on the back end, and then it's growing like compound interest. And somebody brought up something very interesting to me a while ago. And it made me really think. It's like, is $1 million, like, is $1 million in premium a lot? And the question after that is, it just depends on time, right? $1 million a month is a ton, you know. $1 million over a decade is nothing. So it really, like, the time factor is the thing. And if that's the case, then it's like, how can we, you know, we got to do this now. We can't do it later. We're losing.
May not have later
too much. Yeah.
I mean, I even think that building it is a more effective way to create wealth than buying it. Right. And because when you take an agency, like if I go buy $1 million in premium in a year, it's, even with great retention, it's 900,000 in premium if I don't write anything. And then the next year, subtract another 10%, another 10%. So you're paying interest on what's actually a depreciating asset. Right. So your payment goes up if you do nothing.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying you're doing nothing, because now you have some cash flow to do stuff and all of that. But if I just put that same $1 million or whatever it costs to buy that, if I put that same money and just push it in and have the right implementation strategy and the right marketing and all of that, I can grow to what I would have bought fairly quickly and not have any debt.
Right.
And then you're in a really good position.
So are you all advocates of starting from scratch as a new agent getting into this? Is this something you should get into maybe after you have some experience, kind of the typical route? What's y'all's thoughts on that?
I think go ahead.
I would say, I think that the thought process, it's almost not an either or. Mm-hmm. To me, it's either both, or I would say either scratch or both. I think a lot of people end up buying an agency and then not thinking about the component of building and needing to reinvest in it. So their cash flow's low, and then they feel like, oh, I don't want to, I just bought this and I got to pay this note. Like, I'm not going to reinvest. And if that's the one scenario to not do, because that builds the scarcity mindset, where it's like, if you do go into it, realize, hey, I'm going to need an extra $5,000 a month, in marketing, or 10, or I don't know. Like, there has to be an element where you're investing a lot in it to keep that machine going.
Right. You can't just buy it and forget it.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
You're buying the machine, but you still have to put the gas in it, and you still have to get the oil changes. You still have to do all of the things to make the machine go. So the days of purchasing some book and then just sitting back and using it as an annuity are gone.
Right.
At least for now, until they aren't. But I don't see that changing, because a lot of the companies, a lot of the carriers are front loading it, right? So the renewals aren't as high as they were, but you get paid a lot more upfront because they want growth. And so for somebody that wants to move quick and understands a scalable marketing strategy, then it's a huge opportunity. You have a lot of old timers are, they're trying to, complaining. It's like, well, it is what it is. I mean, I could sit here and complain all day long, but that's not going to change the situation. We have a wonderful industry in that you can break it down into a mathematical equation and figure out, with the right elements in place, what you need to do to get to what, right? And just plug and play, and then put in the effort to fine tune the places. You got to train your team. You have to have meetings every day. There's a lot of pieces to the equation, but as long as all those things are happening, you can really blow it up. So
let's get into that now. The how you scaled side of this conversation. You got started, hit that inflection point, and really started pulling a lot of premium in. Kind of take us through kind of the breakdown of what you think, like, say, the top 3 things are that help you scale your business to where it is today.
Top 3 things. I would say one of the biggest impacts that for our agency was, the first thing was deciding, in order to grow and do what I want to do, I cannot be in the weeds anymore. I cannot sell personally. So for me, and it was tough. It was really tough in our agency, because I had talked to most of our clients at that point, and I was, handling all the hardest situations and all that. And to move to that position where it's like, I eventually got to the point where he said, I will not help anyone. Like, I will help my team help the person, but I can't help the person, because I'm my own bottleneck at that point. And, which there was a middle ground. There was a point where I was doing that and I was frustrated with myself, but I did, again, to the point of, you only do what you put up with. I got past the frustration, said, you know what, I just can't do it anymore. So for me, that was number 1, was stopping myself from being the bottleneck. When I was able to do that, then number 2 would have been putting the processes into place. So at that point, I was the coach to everybody, but I didn't have everything written down. So I was constantly having to coach on different things, and I felt like I was saying the same stuff over and over again. So then I realized, okay, we need a process for this. So we broke down, at least for the sales process, what does everybody want when they come in? They want something fast, cheap, fast, and easy. Okay, cool. So then that was like the beginning of the conversation. We got to have that at the beginning. So we wrote out a script, and that was part of the sales process, but everything else decided to come up with processes. Okay, if this, then this, if this, then this. That was number 2 that helped a lot. And then number 3, as we have those processes, that means we could bring on more people, and there was a direction for them to go in, because now there's a process for it. Number 3 was coaching and holding daily meetings. So we have an office, and I think it's a bit of a different business model than yours, but W-2 employees with multiple people coming in and bringing new people in. And I realized, when it comes to sales, just human interaction, everybody especially a P&C agency, are kind of like on their own island. and you can kind of leave them there and you never know what's going on. So holding daily meetings was a game changer in our agency, because it said at the beginning of the day, this is where we're going. This is where we're rowing the boat and in which direction that we're going to row it in. And it also got everybody to understand where everybody's coming from. So daily, if Sally's daughter was going through something, boom, there you go. Now you know that Sally's going through something, instead of like, dude, she's mean, instead of something like that. So I think that the meetings thing was a game changer. So I think that those were the top three things for me that was able to switch into this exponential growth.
Greg?
And I just stole Craig's.
Well, no, it's having all of the different fundamentals in place and then structuring them into processes. I mean, a lot of those same things hold true with what Jason said. Also hiring if agents will come and ask like, oh, when should I be hiring? It's like, you should always be hiring. And then you get the what if. Well, what if I don't have a spot? What if I find a good person? And then it's like, why are we what ifing everything? Listen, at some point, that person sitting out there is going to leave. That is a fact, right? They're going to leave. It's sales. Somebody's going to take them. The better they get, the more likely somebody's going to take them away from you, because they're going to offer them more, and the grass is always greener. So there's always got to be somebody on deck. You always have to be interviewing. You don't always have to hire them, but you always need to be interviewing and finding somebody, because the likelihood of you finding the perfect unicorn at the moment that the other unicorn left is impossible, right? It's zero. So we need to constantly be doing that. There has to be a process for it, right? What do? Do you have a group interview? Do you then whittle it down? And, so there's a funnel for everything. So there's the hiring funnel, there's the sales funnel, the telemarketing funnel. Like, everything has to be well organized. And it doesn't mean it can't be a fun environment. I mean, I know we were just on a conference call earlier. Jason was at his sales office, and you can't hear anything in the background because it's loud and they're having fun and they're all selling. And that's awesome. And that's what it needs to be like. You got to have that energy, but it has to be organized chaos, I think, is the best way to put it, right? A room full of salespeople.
Jason, how hard was it for you? And I think this is probably something we all go through. I know I did when I was selling insurance, and then you start recruiting, and then your time's eaten up by something other than selling. And you've got to make this decision. What are you going to be, a salesperson or a agency man? How hard was it for you? If you could walk us through that process of handing the reins over of selling to other people.
It was hard, but I knew it was the only way at some point. Cause I mean, prior to that, you wake up early, you come into the office before everybody gets there, you do some stuff to get ready for the day. Then you have your meeting, you get everybody on. Next thing you know, you're doing the daily work. Then the office shuts down. You stay a few hours after to do the extra stuff. So I was working 12-hour days for a while. And I mean, that wears on you. Over time. And at some point, I know that a couple of the thoughts that came into my head is, one was, A, I can't do this forever. B, we're not getting anywhere. Yeah. And C, like, this does not make any sense. I bought a business. Now I'm wearing all these hats, working 12-hour days, making less. This is just horrible. Like, right. So I just said, the one hat that I have to take, like, I cannot, I guess some of the hats that you can take off in order would be, you can't take off why would you take off the business side of it or the marketing side of it and give the reins to somebody else? Like, the lowest thing on the priority list, I would say, would be being like the one person in the office that does everything, because you can't,
Right.
Yeah. You can't be the best arguably we would all say that we're the best salesperson in the office, but we cannot be the best salesperson in the office. Right. We have to duplicate ourselves and make a bunch of clones. And that's where the meetings come in. I mean, we talk about the same things every day? And I'm going to use my favorite my favorite quote of the moment, which is some famous pianist said, if I stop practicing for 1 day, I notice. If I stop practicing for 2 days, my wife notices. If I stop practicing for 3 days, the audience notices. And I think that that's really, really vital to understand from a sales process standpoint, in that we have to have that process, the script, like what Jason was talking about, but it doesn't just mean memorize it. It means practice, nonstop practicing some piece of it, watching the tape, meaning, listening to those phone calls, and just constantly going through that, because one day off and you're rusty. I know if one of my salespeople is out for a week, they come back and they're not on their A game like they were before they left.
Right.
It's just human nature. You're going to go to what's easiest, and following the script, asking the right questions, doing tie downs, doing all of the important things to really create a good sales process is much harder than just doing the quote, right? Anybody can follow the form and spit out some price, but that isn't how you sell the policy.
So can you speak to how you implement that? And does this tie in with y'all's daily meetings, as far as not just a meeting, but training? How do you execute the training and the kind of this follow-up process to ensure that your reps are doing exactly as they should?
So every new person that comes in is handed the script, and it's not read it verbatim, but you're going to follow this process, and it has an order to it. And then they have to present it after you create a deadline. It can't be, you're going to present this someday. It's on Friday at the meeting in the morning. You're going to present this to everybody. And I am. And, so they take it seriously, and then they do it. And it usually is pretty rough, and that's okay, because now they've done it in front of their peers, which is much more difficult than doing it on the phone. And then they're just going to do it on the phone, right? Practice. And when I think we do a thing called hot seats, where we actually play the call in the room, and it's random who gets chosen for the hot seat for that week. But you play the call and we just go through it and we dissect it. It's not to beat anybody up, but it's to make you better.
So you're taking an agent's call, a recording from it, and then kind of doing a hot seat,
take the actual call. Yeah.
Okay.
And what could she have done better in this situation? What did she do really well? Where were the opportunities where we could have taken that conversation and maybe ended up resulting in the sale? A lot of, especially if we bring somebody on that is previously has worked at another agency, we'll find that the call ends at give the price. A lot of people don't even ask for the business, right? It's just like, and it's $26.43 a month. And then they just sit there like, that's the close. It's like, no, you got to tie that up.
Right.
And all I need to do to get that started is your kind of routing number, and then shut up. And then when they hear the no, they think, okay, well, I'll email it over. And it's like, no, the call starts now. Like the real call starts when they say no. And, working through that. So we do a ton of overcoming objections training, so that it has to be just comes out naturally. Right. And the only way is repetition.
Lots of repetition, lots of opportunity. And it's a frequent occurrence. Yeah. It's not something that's random or rare.
And I think a good way to do that too, and I think it's like people complicate it all too, is that, a meeting is like, you're like a coach. So you want to run the plays for the day. That's it. So you break down all the different elements of whatever you're doing. You could do this with a service team, sales team. I don't care what you're selling. You break down all the different elements, and then you just run plays on it. And then another version, like Craig was saying, listen to the calls, is the version of let's watch the game that we played the other day and see what we did. Because when you do it and then you hear it or see it or whatever, it's totally different. Like most of the times that, our agents will do like a one-on-one. If they listen to the call, you almost don't have to say anything. They know, they just didn't realize that it was like that because they were in the moment. So, like overcoming objections is one of those, well, how do you do that in the meeting? Just what are the objections they get? I mean, there's only so many, 10 maybe. I don't care what you're selling. You're going to probably 80% of the objections that you get you could do under two hands, right? Yeah. So write them down, then list them from top to bottom. What's the one you hear the most? Not 1 to 10. most to least that you hear. Okay, cool. Now what would you say to that? I mean, you can almost just ask the questions of the team and they'll give you the answers. And that would be a good way to start that kind of conversation if you didn't have that prior in your agency.
Yeah. And both of y'all agree, having an agent listen to their calls it can be career changing, right?
Oh
yeah.
There's no better training, right? It makes them very aware of what they're saying. And that's important, right? A lot of times it's just like, you don't want them just barfing out a bunch of stuff. They need to actually be aware and think through what's coming out based on what was said.
You cannot not do it.
Right. It's
not
non-negotiable.
You're running a sales team. No, if you're running a sales team, you have to listen to the calls with that agent. And it's super uncomfortable. If you've never done it before, I'll never forget when I first started doing it. It's like, I was just as nervous as the other person. We were both nervous, but like, you cannot not do it. You have to do it. It's going to be uncomfortable. It gets super easy after that. And then it becomes kind of fun after that. Right. But yeah, got it.
With all the scarcity mentality is put on the wrong thing. If we're going to have a scarcity mentality, it should be on let's lower the price of our leads by having the people properly trained to close the leads, not just buy the leads and hope that they work, because that's not going to happen. That you could buy a whole lot of leads and some percentage will close. But if you want to close more of them, the team has to be properly prepared.
Cool. Yep. Yeah. 100%. That's so important. One thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Craig, go ahead.
They'll always go towards that, like I said before, the easy path. And the more that they do it a certain way, the more that's the way it becomes, right? You cut that groove in their mind. That neural pathway just starts, okay, this is what I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to say. And if we don't correct the behavior, it doesn't change, right? So that's why it's so important to reinforce it over and over with the right way and correct it.
Thought I had in my head. I'm curious with you guys. You have employees. You motivate people to sell. You train them to sell. Do you incentivize with bonuses or gifts of any kind? And what's your thoughts on that being effective or not?
With getting the team to sell?
Yeah, like a person who sells the most this month wins, I don't know, $500, $1,000, or trip or.
So I have a
set of steak knives.
Yeah,
that's
and I would say that Craig and I have had this conversation before. You know how agents get a bonus at the end of the year, and then it's like it's 2 months into it, and it's like I'm not a huge fan of, like, I love giving any kind of carrots, especially but I don't like long ones. Like sales agents are really good, or just I think agents, well, just employees, I would say, like your team, really good at seeing the near but not the far. So like doing shorter ones, like, hey, this week we're going to be working on this. This is a bonus at the end of the week. I think that kind of stuff works a lot better than, I think the further out that you dangle that carrot or whatever, it's least likely to happen. So, and I think that it should be done in a fun way. It's almost like, and here's another thing. Anytime we've done like a bonus thing that's consistent, if it's too consistent, it just becomes expected and it's not even a bonus anymore.
You do have to switch it up.
You got to switch it up, different things, keep it fun, have it a part of those meetings or something, and keep it short. That would be my, and if it's done that way, that's when it's worked the best in our agency.
So if I may kind of get some clarification, you prefer, like a weekly top producer type of incentive versus like a quarterly or semi or annual type?
Yeah. And I use it to correct the little behaviors that as a group we're struggling with. So like if it's the one call close, let's do a one call close contest this week. Whoever gets the most one call closes, or like all those behaviors that we want to incentivize, do it, give them a framework of the way to do it and how to achieve it for the week. And then everybody kind of gets on the same page.
And they have monthly commission, like they get commission based off of sales, but it's like they have to hit certain milestones to really get paid. So it's decent leading up to a certain amount, but then it's pretty significant. And I have one that consistently is making $6,000 a month on bonus or commission for the
Right.
month. But the little one-off contests, I do love to switch that up. And it doesn't necessarily need to be sales based. To Jason's point, if they're not making enough dials, okay, make a dial contest. Who's going to get the most dials today, or who's going to have the most quotes today? Or, there's so many different pieces of the whole telefunnel that you can create the incentive at any piece, right?
Gotcha.
So if they're not hitting enough quotes, or their closing percentage is too low, you can base it off closing percentage and try to bump it that way. So a lot of ways to move the needle.
Cool. So as we get kind of closer here to wrapping things up, I want to talk a little about how you guys scaled up from a marketing standpoint, and what kind of processes you guys put in place to really get the lead flow in, and how you kind of manage the whole marketing process in conjunction with sales. So Jason, if you want to start there, and Craig, you can jump in after.
Yeah. So we buy internet leads. Then they go to telemarketers. We know this is that off of dials, you probably are only going to talk to 10% of leads that you buy. So if you buy 100, you're only going to talk to 10 of those today. We also know that most sales happen between the what is it, Craig? The 20th?
It's like the 8th and the 31st.
8th to the 31st phone call. So you know that it's going to have to get called a lot. So basically the front lines of that whole process is our telemarketers just sifting through the garbage, not even the good ones, but just taking the garbage off the plates of our agents and then getting that over to the agent. Once the agent has it, then they can follow up with their already quoted leads, or maybe a lead that was brought up that we know that, if somebody answers the phone once, they're a habitual answer to the phoner. So maybe they can, the agent can follow up with that as well as the telemarketers. But how to scale that kind of process was, when you're buying those kind of leads, you got to have a serious CRM to keep track of all that, and to help the agents do the work of 10 people rather than just themselves. So, text, email, phone calls, but then also be able to organize them in a good follow-up process and all that. And then the CRM, or if you have a separate system, you have to know your contact rates. You have to know your cost per sale. So those are the things that you want to track. And then I usually track, your cost per sale on a weekly basis. It's usually like a week, a month, 2 months, and 3 months. And you just want to keep, at the end of that 3-month process, you want to keep it under whatever makes sense for the commission that you're making. And I don't even mind breaking even. I never mind breaking even on leads within that 90 days for the commission that you're getting. Because I think one thing that a lot of agents don't think about is, what is the lifetime value of those new clients. And we, it might be 3.5 renewals, maybe it's 6 renewals, whatever it may be, but you got to really consider that in this, because you got to look at it as a 3 to 5 year plan. Like, if you're going to stay in your agency for like 3 to 5 years, these leads are way more valuable than you think they are. So then you start putting that into play. And then also the post sale, and can you add one more policy? What is your average policies per client? And that's another metric to really pay attention to, because if they have 1.2 policies per client and you can bump that up to 1.7, you just got a massive pay raise. And that's on leads that you already bought from the beginning. And that's, that extra 0.5% that you bumped it up was all free. Right. You just got, so looking at all those different elements, I think is the most important.
Yeah. Once you're able to pull yourself back and work from the 40,000 foot view on all of the metrics, we've made millions of dials, and with including the Teledudes clients, over 30 million dials. So we have a ton of analytics on what those numbers are, and they work, right? Like, it just works. So what we know is most agents that buy leads don't call them more than 4 times. Not more than 4 times. We call them over 100 times until they say, put me on the do not call. If they say that, then they're gone. But we close people on over the 100th dial, right? And so we crunch the numbers on like a 30-day period that we talk about on this webinar we do. But it's pretty insane the amount of business that's written post for, so 5 dials or higher is 95% of the business. And so most agents are leaving 95% of the business on the table and then saying that the source that they got it from is no good. And it's interesting once you're on the other side of it and understand those analytics, and then not in the weeds, but actually orchestrating everything, that it really changes. So
you made an interesting point earlier. You segment the marketing, or I should say the prospecting from the selling. The agent is not doing the prospecting on the front end. You have hired telemarketers to do this process. What are the advantages of this arrangement, outsourcing the prospecting, as opposed to letting the agent do all of the prospecting and the selling?
So anytime that you can put somebody into a role that is less expensive and it requires less skill to do, you've got to, right? It's the same as the doctor isn't going to bust the tables. The doctor is going to perform the surgeries.
Right.
And so we put the telemarketers to make the 500 dials a day, 500, 600, however many dials a day on X number of leads, because the producers or the sales agents need to be doing 8 to 20 quoted households a day. And there aren't enough hours in the day for them to make 500 dials and do that many quotes. It's just impossible, right? It would take 16 hours. And so what you do, and then there's a positive externality of all this, in that when you're feeding the team, they love it, right? Maybe they get a little lazy, but they also love that they're getting fed opportunity all day long, and they're doing the thing that's going to make them money. So then by default, they stay longer. And if somebody stays longer, then you don't have as much turnover. If you don't have as much turnover, then obviously you save a ton of money there.
Right.
But you still need to always be recruiting.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say the most positive aspects of it is it requires less agents to write more premium, and the agents that are with you are now making more money. So why would they want to go anywhere? Mm-hmm.
I'd say too, it's probably a lot better of a work experience, not having to grind through hundreds. That's the, but the talking to qualified, interested prospects, quoting and selling is what we all love to do. At the end of the day, it's prospecting, in my experience, that people gripe about.
It's brutal. Yeah.
Well, the amount of time it takes for somebody to get licensed, get trained, become somebody that can actually write business for your agency, to put them in a role where 90% of the time they're not doing anything, right? It's just dialing.
Yeah.
That's a terrible use of resources. So, with Teledudes, we have an unlimited supply of people that are happily doing this for $9 an hour. And it's the proverbial no-brainer.
Yeah. And can you,
those people,
kind of as we wrap this up, and I appreciate you guys being here. It's been great. You mentioned Teledudes a couple of times. Give us kind of the rundown of what this exactly is, who would be interested in this, and then how they can learn more.
You go, Mr. Jason.
Yeah. So Teledudes is that piece between the agents and the leads, and they're really trying to find out the leads that are willing and able to talk to the agents. So we created a process. We have an incredible network of telemarketers, and they come into our agency, or your agency, and they are your employee that it's going to make 500 to 800 dials a day, sorting through all your leads, but consistently. So if Sally doesn't show up today or something, you still get the dials, and you can still move those quotes over to a different agent. But the consistency of being able to do that is what what your Teledudes provide. And when we started, it was pretty confusing. So with that, with the whole system, you get into a group of agents that are all doing the same thing, that love answering questions, and that are selling, well more than 6 figures a month. And then on top of that, there's some training in there, how to set up all the different elements in your agency to make this give you the best ROI. And I think that's like the piece that kind of puts it all together.
Yeah. Long-term strategy.
And this is this more of a PNC type of agent this would be appropriate for? Do you feel like other agents would also possibly benefit from this too?
It's geared towards PNC, but we do have life agents. We even have a window company, a bunch of other businesses that use us as well. Just because it's a nice streamlined process, all the different pieces that we put together for it. But I would say it's primarily for PNC. PNC, we have that whole blueprint that gives you.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So, gentlemen, thank you for being here. And y'all have a podcast too. Where can we go to learn more and listen?
All of the podcast platforms. You just Google Insurance Dudes and a whole slew of stuff will come up.
You'll
YouTube, see our
right?
cartoon faces.
Yeah, you'll see our cartoon faces. And we are on YouTube.
Yeah.
Would love to get some subscribers.
Yeah.
And cross that 1,000 mark.
So I'll put the link below to the subscriber or to the channel.
Cool.
And then also email me the website, guys, for Teledudes. What is the website, by the way?
www.theidudes.com.
Okay. And I'll put that below in the chat, guys. So if you're interested, click that and go.
And I think we have your interview, your first interview on YouTube. So you got to check that out. That was awesome.
That's a couple years ago. Right? Yeah. It's been a while. Time flies.
And then the new one dropped today on all the podcast platforms.
It did. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right. Well, hey, guys, I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for being on the show.
So awesome. Thank you, David.
All right,
guys. Yeah. Really appreciate it.
See you.